and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies, movie news, some streaming television. We got a little bit of streaming stuff to talk about here today. And congratulations, everybody, on making it through to the end of another week. May you have a wonderful weekend planned ahead of yourselves, filled with relaxation, fun, and enjoyment, whatever it is you want to do. And speaking of fun and enjoyment, he brings it everywhere he goes. He's the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
John, it's the end of another month for us. Really?
It is. I keep forgetting about that. It's October 30th today.
Going into the 11th month of 2020. The longest year of recent memory.
I cannot wait. I mean, I know it's the ongoing meme, and I know everybody's saying the same thing. I cannot wait to get this year behind us. I just so cannot wait to get this year behind us. Anyway, guys, we trust that you all are doing well on this fine Friday, and we're awfully glad that you've joined us here today. We do have a bunch of really interesting things to talk about here. Of course, we're going to talk about, of all the MCU shows, how do we rank them in terms of our anticipation? Obviously, we've got a little bit of a Mandalorian show that we're going to talk about. A Halloween trailer dropped literally a year in advance. We're going to talk about that and a few things more. Here's how today's show is going to go, guys. We're going to spend the first half of the show talking about preset topics, and then when we're going to get into the second half of the show, we're going to take your live comments and questions. How do you get a live comment or question on the show? Just go to the description of this video. See at the very top of the description of this video, you're going to see a tip link, or you can enter it in manually simply at streammoments.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your comment or question on the show if it's within reason. And of course, you'll be supporting the show at the same time. And by the way, guys, I also want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, why don't you take a second and click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to the YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on all the things that we've got going on here. Okay, guys, before we get into our main topics today, there are a couple of things that have come in off the top that we should talk about, and that is this. One of the big announcements that came in, Rob, remember when there used to be conventions? Remember that?
I don't know, man. I vaguely something, maybe.
Remember that way back when? But one of the big things that came out, of course, was that Taika Waititi was coming back to the MCU to once again direct Thor, this time in Thor: Love and Thunder. And one of the other characters appearing in besides Thor himself was Natalie Portman herself, was making her return to Thor: Love and Thunder. That got a lot of people excited. Now listen, I am a huge Natalie Portman fan. Make no mistake about it. I am a very, very big Natalie Portman fan. But when I think of the weaker things in the Thor films, and I'm a fan of the Thor films, one of the weaker things to me in the Thor films was not Natalie Portman, but the lack of chemistry between Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth on screen. I just never bought the romance. I like the character Jane, but I just never bought the romance. Granted, I don't like romance in 95% of comic book movies, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. But not only they announced she was coming back, but that she would be wielding Mjolnir itself and become the mighty Thor. Well, now we find out a little bit something interesting as well. Natalie Portman was just being interviewed, and she talks about the fact that her character will be known as the mighty Thor, and also that her character is going to have a different set of abilities, or at least a certain different number of powers than Chris Hemsworth's Thor is. This is what she had to say. She said, so she does have powers, says Natalie Portman. It's not exactly the same as Thor, though. It's her own version of it, and she's called the mighty Thor. All right, let me get this first thing out of the way. I don't care what you do in the comic books. The comic books are the comic books, the movies are the movies. I don't care. It happened in the comics is not an excuse for something you do in the movies. I do not like that they're calling her Thor. I do not like that they're calling her Thor. Thor is Thor. Bobby is Bobby. Rob is Rob. John is John. Thor is Thor. Why not just call her some new name? I've never liked in any comic book entity of just taking a different character and giving them the same name. I just generally don't like that. You know, even though I'm super looking forward to Falcon and Winter Soldier, and I love the Falcon character very much, I don't want them calling him Captain America. Steve Rogers is Captain America, is Steve Rogers, is Captain America, is Steve Rogers. I mean, that's just the way I personally look at it, right? And to me, it's like, you know, after the death of Superman, going to Gus at his gas station, and Gus comes out in a t-shirt with the S logo. You're, oh, I'm the new Superman. No, you're not, Gus. You're Gus. No, government said I could. I'm Superman now. See, I got the S on my shirt. I'm Superman. Anyway, I don't like that. Is it a big deal? No, it's absolutely not a big deal. Just a little thing that bothers me. But Rob, getting into that one point though, about them saying she's going to have different powers, that to me, I got to admit, the first time I heard that, I thought, well, if she's wielding Mjolnir, she's wielding Mjolnir. Shouldn't she just basically kind of have the same power set? But the more I thought about it, I guess it makes sense that she wouldn't, because she ain't Asgardian. She's human. So I guess it would actually kind of make sense that whatever sort of power set manifests itself within her may play out a little bit different. So even though I was at first reluctant to the idea, it actually does make sense to me now. How it doesn't sound like it's going to be radically different. But anyway, Rob, you heard about these two little facts that Natalie Portman just dropped. One, she is, as many people suspected, going to be known as Mighty Thor in it. But the second, and I think the more interesting thing, is her power set's going to be a little bit different. Do you like that idea? How far do you think they're going to stray? What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, yeah, she should be the Mighty Thor if she's picking up the mantle of the Thunder God. And I would assume that the way they're going to explain it is that, you know, everybody, whoever takes on the mantle of the God of Thunder, what that means is it has to be filtered through who you are, you know, your willpower, your strength of heart, and everybody's a little bit different. So it makes sense. And like you pointed out, she is human. She's not Asgardian. So and she's a woman. So I would assume that instead of, you know, there'd be feminine energy there. If you're the God of Thunder, I mean, maybe because she's the life giver, you know, men cannot bear children. So there is a power, there's an inherent power in that you can bring forth life. Now combine that with the powers of Mjolnir and the Thunder God. I mean, there's a twist on that, which I think is interesting. So depends. Look, I have thoroughly enjoyed the MCU. Its ups, its downs. For the most part, it's been the most, I think, consistently entertaining franchise, maybe in the history of anything. So I'm really looking forward to this. I think Taika Waititi coming back, I think he's going to crush it. I think they're going to crush it. I saw Natalie Portman on Jimmy Fallon talking about her workout routines. You know, I don't know. She seems excited. She seems fired up. So who wouldn't be? I can't wait to see. I'm really looking forward to the next phase of the MCU because I think it's going to be bananas.
Yeah. And now, whether bananas is going to be a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. But listen, you just kind of nailed it. Taika Waititi coming back to do this. I mean, I love Chris Hemsworth as Thor. I like Natalie Portman. It's an MCU film. But to me, the thing that really pushes it over top for me is Taika Waititi. Not just because of how much he absolutely crushed it with Thor Ragnarok, which was at the same time. Now, remember, Thor Ragnarok was before Endgame, but it was at the same time probably the most jovial, maybe the funniest of the MCU films, while at the same time being the darkest. I mean, he had a movie where Thor loses his eye, Mjolnir gets destroyed, his father dies, and the world of Asgard is destroyed. All that happens within the same movie that was also one of the most entertaining and fun and funny at the same time. And then you saw him extend that out in Jojo Rabbit, which was one of the most absolutely best films of the year, got a lot of Oscar attention, won him an Academy Award, as a matter of fact. So for him to come back, that's what pushes it over the edge for me. The question is for you guys. What do you think about Natalie Portman's statements? I think it's pretty interesting. How are you taking it? Jump down to the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Do you have something to throw in there, Rob?
No. When you said interesting, I'm like, me too. I was just kind of,
me too.
I was concurring with you. Yeah.
I thought you were about to throw in another breaking news story. All right.
No. Oh, I'll look for one though.
With all that down, guys, let's move on to another off the top here, shall we? And that off the top is this. In the aforementioned Avengers Endgame, there were a lot of pop moments, you know, a moment that happens on screen where the audience just explodes. Big pop, big pop, big pop. One of the biggest pops, every time I went into the theater to watch this movie, was what became known as the A-Force scene. When on the battlefield at the end of Avengers, you had all the female characters. Made no logistical sense that actually happened, that they all happened to be in the same spot. But then again, there's a number of big pops in Endgame that made no logistical sense, and that's fine. But when all the female characters got together and did their big rush, every time I was in the theater, there was a big explosion, a big pop. Now, there has been some talk and conversations going on about the possibility of an all-female Avengers-style team-up movie. Kevin Feige talked about it a while ago as something that they were looking at and being possible. Well, according to one of the stars of the MCU, Letitia Wright, who plays Shuri in Black Panther, according to her, it's not a possibility, it's happening. Like, to her, this thing is absolutely happening. She was being interviewed about it and talked about it. And when asked about the idea of bringing together like an all-female group, she says this: "I don't think we have to fight for it," Letitia Wright says. Victoria Alonso, Marvel Studios Executive Vice President of Production, is very strong about spearheading this thing alongside Kevin Feige, Marvel Studio President. It is only a matter of time before they do it. So to Letitia Wright, who, by the way, she's 26 years old. She's not the 16-year-old they make her out to be in Black Panther. She's probably male or female. I don't know if there was a more stunning human being, male or female, in all of the MCU than Letitia Wright. But to Letitia Wright, this concept of like an all-female Avengers movie is no longer just a possibility. To her, she's saying, oh no, it's happening. Like, we've got the executive vice president, we've got the president, this is happening. The only question now is, it's a matter of time. And I don't doubt it for a second, and I believe it. Listen, Kevin Feige is a guy who notoriously does not move quickly on things. He's very patient and takes his time. How many years before they announced a Black Widow movie that Kevin Feige said, yeah, I'm looking at doing a Black Widow movie? Years. When they got the rights to the Fox properties in X-Men and Fantastic Four, a lot of people thought, well, they're going to go into production next month. They're going to make a X-Men in the MCU. No, Kevin Feige's like, look, I got 5 years planned right now. And he takes his time and he's methodical. And so it doesn't actually surprise me to hear Letitia Wright come out in this point and say, oh, no, it's happening. Right now, it's just a matter of when. That's all that's left. The only question left on the table right now, Rob, is when. So it's going to happen. I completely believe at this point now it's going to happen. Letitia Wright seems to think so. I think it's going to happen. The question there are two questions that now come up, Rob, and I'll put these to you. Number one, how long do you think we're going to need to wait for this? And is it even a good idea? I mean, is it a good idea to pull a film like this together right now? What's your take on this?
Well, one, I think it's the way that you can do an event. If you needed to, you could do an Avengers movie now with the all-girl team because they've been introduced already. You know, people know them. You know, they're not dealing with the repercussions of losing two of their key members. And it gives you a whole new dynamic. And if you wanted to do sort of an Ocean's 8 version of an all-female Avengers team, I think that could be great. I think that could be great. The only thing that I would worry about is there's got to be a reason to get them all together that I think is credible, which I'm sure they could figure out. And two, the ramifications. I mean, we're coming off of Avengers movies, Infinity War and Endgame. Yeah, they don't get much bigger than that. So it would be interesting to see what they're going to come up with that can be universe shaking enough that people would be as engaged as they were from these other films. But I like the idea. I think the idea is really cool. I don't understand. I mean, look, you know, everyone talks about, whether this is woke or Me Too or whatever. No, I like, it's happened in comic books before. I like the idea of getting all these characters together and going to kicking ass somewhere. I'm in. I'll watch that.
You know what's interesting to me is that, you know, there's a novelty to this idea, and some people think novelty is a bad word. Novelty can be really great and really effective. You just got to be very careful not to overplay the novelty of something. Like once the novelty of something wears off, right?
I agree. I mean, it again, for me, it's all about great characters and a great story. As long as you have that, if you lead with the fact that we're going to make an all-female Avengers film, okay, well, that's your premise. You never lead with that. You got to come up with great characters and a great story. They've got the characters. So now they have to have a good story. And once you have those two things, then you can market the film by saying it's the first all-female Avengers team up. But you got to give me a good story first and foremost. And look, I don't doubt that they already have one. I think
I don't doubt it either. I don't doubt it. Nope. But here's the interesting thing. Again, the novelty of it, you cannot deny the pop. And again, to me, it was really surprising. But when that A-Force scene happens in Endgame, the pop in that theater, not as big as Mjolnir flying through the air and landing in Captain America's hands, right, which is something we had been waiting years to see. But it was a major, major pop, and the novelty, that is cool. What I've already seen online, some people, though, and this is what bothers me, saying some people online like, oh, there's the novelty of blah, blah. Listen, when people start talking about, when these rumors start going around is, hey, you know what? The new Spider-Man, it's going to have Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire too. Don't freak out and start pissing your pants, because guess what? That's a novelty. That's right. Totally a novelty, and that's not a bad thing. But the hypocrisy of, oh, getting all excited about this idea of like bringing in Andrew, but then going, oh, that's just a novelty. That's just a shtick, bringing all the female things. It's like, pick a side. Like, you don't get to have one and not the other. Like, if one's okay, then the other's okay. But I agree with you, Rob.
I mean,
don't pull the trigger on it unless you got a foundational idea.
Yeah, like the novelty is great. I mean, that's the trigger that gets people into the theater or whatever, that gets people interested. But if you've got a killer story, you know, the reason, and what's fun is when you have ensemble movies like this it's the character interplay and the character banter. And, you know, look at all look at all the actresses that they have playing these roles. I'd love to see them all team up to go on a woman on a mission movie. You know, whether it's the Dirty Dozen or whether it's the Guns of Navarone in space, whatever. I mean, bring it on. It can be great.
Yeah, I think this is, listen, again, I admit and I confess, to me, this is the instant appeal to this is the novelty of it. I mean, that's the instant appeal for me, is the novelty of it. But it's really no different than finding out that we were getting a Thor movie where Hulk was going to be second chair in it, where it was going to be basically a Thor and Hulk movie going around. It's like, okay, all right, that sounds kind of cool. The other idea of doing this sort of thing that's never really been done before in the new age of comic book movies with DC or Marvel would kind of be the first time. I think there's an interesting novelty of it. And listen, it would be different, Rob, if the MCU didn't have a good collection of really great female characters, but they do.
Yeah.
From Shuri and Valkyrie and I don't know what's going to happen with Black Widow, whether she could or could not be, Nebula, Scarlet Witch, Okoye. I mean, there's just, they have a
Mantis.
Really great Mantis. They have a really great Captain Marvel. They have a really great collection of female characters. If it was just like they had a bunch of C-level characters and nobody really liked, but that would be questionable, but I think they've got the lineup here. I think they have a strong enough lineup that they could pull something like this up. It could be total crap. Absolutely it could be. But I think they definitely have a force of personalities in this lineup that it could be. And by the way, didn't even mention Pepper. Like,
right.
I fell in love with the Pepper character at the end of Endgame. I can't remember what the code name of that was when she's wearing that armor, but I thought that was great too. Rob, how would you evaluate the strength of the lineup? Because I think you've got the characters here to do it. What do you think?
I do too. You know, you got to have I know she's not a superhero, but you got to have a Okoye in there just because I love her so much, and I really want an Okoye Hot Toys figure. But I think that that these characters are all great and they're different enough that their interplay off one another could be awesome. And Pepper in the armor, she's got her own Iron Man armor, you know, and maybe she's been training with it because she realized that Tony was right. Tony Stark wanted to build a suit of armor around the world. And if the Avengers didn't exist, if Tony didn't exist, the world would have been lost. You know, they wouldn't have taken it back from what Thanos did. So maybe I loved the idea of Pepper in her armor. By the way, they're making that hot toy figure. Come on, what's up?
I would love, you know what I would love? A hot toy duo set with Tony and Pepper back to back in that, because I had said that was the other one of the big pop moments in Endgame is when it's just a very quick shot of Tony and Pepper both in the air fighting off, and they end up in that one shot where they're back to back and the camera spins around. It's like, oh, that was such a great shot. Well,
when you get that Pepper figure, I already have the Iron Man armor, so when you get the Pepper figure, I can recreate that on
just
the
make it happen. Just make it happen. All right, guys, the question is, what do you think about this? Do you think Letitia's right? Do you think it is now a foregone conclusion? This movie is going to happen at some point. Maybe you still have some doubts about that. What do you think about the idea for it in general? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's now move into our main topics today. And how do we select our main topics here at the John Campea Show? Well, it's really simple. You see, you guys come up with them. By any time you come across a piece of news or a story that you think we should talk about here, go on over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you guys get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your submission featured as a main topic here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number 1. And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Darren Friesen. And Darren Friesen writes, "Hey, John and Rob, I saw they dropped a new trailer for Halloween Kills today." This was yesterday. "And it was pretty good. But the movie doesn't come out for another year. What was the point of putting that out now? Do you think they'll surprise us by releasing it early, maybe on streaming?" All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, I was surprised when we saw a Halloween Kills trailer drop yesterday, especially and primarily because when you consider the fact that this is a movie that doesn't come out for another year. So what's the point? Well, on the one hand, I thought they didn't release this theatrically because, Rob, you put a trailer like that in theaters, it's going to cost you some shekels, right? It's going to cost you some money to do that. It wasn't a television commercial. So as far as I know, and I could be wrong about this, as far as I know, they didn't spend money to air it on TV. They literally just cut it and put it out online. So really, when you consider it, it's not like they were blowing their budget on this. It's not like they were blowing their marketing budget. At the same time, I think there is a fundamental problem with releasing trailers so early because I believe we saw it happen with, Rob, you and I talk about Godzilla a lot, the last Godzilla movie, that I really felt like one of the things that played into it underperforming at the box office was the fact that they were, exploding all the enthusiasm and climaxing early with all their stuff almost a year in advance. And by the time the movie did come out, it's like, oh, that movie still hadn't come out? Like they'd been talking about Godzilla for over a year. Is that the case here? Just putting out, I think it was like less than a minute. I think it was around a minute. I can't remember exactly, but putting out some little trailer. The other problem though is this now, is that now you've already shown a bunch of stuff in the trailer that when it does come time to properly market the film, a bunch of the stuff that's going to be in your trailers is stuff that people have already seen. So that first trailer, that's like 4.5 months out from when Halloween comes out, it's not going to have that same oomph. The one thing, Rob, that Darren says here that I think is actually rather fascinating that I had not considered is there a possibility that instead of the movie being a year away, maybe they make some sort of move that, hey, guess what? The movie's actually only 6 months away and they're planning some sort of surprise. I don't think that's likely. I don't think that's likely, but it's an interesting thing to ponder. So I don't know. On the one hand, not a big deal. They didn't spend much money on it. I do believe, though, it starts hype far too early in advance because, Rob, them putting this trailer out now is not going to make $1 of box office difference when that movie comes out. Them releasing this trailer now, a year in advance, is going to do absolutely no good for how much or little the movie makes when it comes out. So, I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle. No harm, no foul, but did it really accomplish anything? I'm not sure. Rob, you saw that they dropped it. By the way, I didn't even mention, I like the trailer. I like the trailer. I thought it was fun. Rob, what do you think about the trailer? And what do you think about their decision to drop it a year in advance.
Well, I liked it too. And I think that with everything being pushed essentially a year, I kind of felt like, oh, that was so nice of them. I wasn't even thinking about it in terms of, we're going to wait a year, or maybe it'll show up on SVOD or something, or PVOD, whatever we're calling it now. I just think it was nice. It's Halloween, and for me, it was like getting a treat. No tricks, just a treat. I thought that Blumhouse has been just crushing it lately. They got their anthology going on. They got all kinds of things happening. And I think that for the Halloween fans, it was nothing more than this year sucks. Have a little treat from us. Take a little taste of Halloween Kills. And I think it was just them saying, we appreciate your patronage. We appreciate your fandom. We just, so you all know, it does not go unnoticed. Thank you. And that's kind of how I felt about it. I'm like, people, it might be a year away, but it's not like people aren't going to go see it when it comes out. Like you said, it's not that expensive of a film, and it has a lot of goodwill. And it put a smile on my face because I love Halloween, and this Halloween is essentially like the apocalypse in Pacific Rim. It's been canceled. And I'm sad about that. And I gotta say, John, I was beaming from ear to ear when I watched that. Yeah, I know it was too short, but I loved it.
I didn't think it was too short, again, because it's the thing that's a year away. But you raised a great point, because I myself have said on this show, like, any type of little scrap we can get right now to kind of lift the spirits is a good thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that was really it. I mean, look, we are at Halloween, right? We're at Halloween. And I got to say, it was pretty fun watching it. And maybe, you know what? Maybe maybe dropping this trailer doesn't do anything for the marketing of the movie. Maybe dropping this trailer doesn't mean a single dollar more for the box office a year from now. But if the goal was just like, hey guys, here's a treat, something to smile about, maybe it was worth it, because it made me smile. I liked it.
Made me smile too. And sometimes that's enough.
Sometimes that's enough. Guys, the question is for you. What did you think about the decision to drop a trailer for a movie that doesn't come out for another year? Did it strategically really not make any sense? But like Rob is saying, hey, but it was just put out there to make us feel good in what has been a completely rotten year. I think there's something to that. What do you guys think about it? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's move on to main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Bill Thor. I almost said Bill Thor. Bill Thor. And Bill Thor writes, there have been many news regarding Marvel Disney Plus shows, WandaVision, Falcon the Winter Soldier, Loki, Ms. Marvel, Hawkeye, She-Hulk, and Moon Knight lately. Now that every Disney Plus series announced at Comic-Con or D23 has either a lead actor, directors, and screenwriters all attached, how would you rank them in terms of excitement? All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah. We are finally, not only did Mandalorian drop last night, which we will talk about here in just a few minutes, but we are actually now tangibly getting closer to this promise of MCU content on Disney Plus. Hell, the promise of any content on Disney Plus is finally now here, starting to come to fruition. WandaVision's coming up pretty soon, probably in December. Falcon and Winter Soldier should come, hopefully not too much longer after that, on and on and on. And so we are sitting here right now on the cusp of a lot of Marvel MCU shows coming. I believe we got 7 on tap right now. 7. They are Falcon and Winter Soldier, WandaVision, She-Hulk, Hawkeye, Ms. Marvel, Moon Knight, and Loki. These are the ones that are coming. And it's really good because as we've heard not only about the shows, Rob, themselves, as they point out, we have been getting news about casting, news about directors on them, news about writers on them. So we are starting to actually get a picture of what all these shows are. And I think it's a fun question to ask. Now that we know a lot of this stuff, where do these things rank in terms of our excitement and how enthusiastic and how hyped and how much are we looking forward to these things? So Rob, let's throw it over to you first. If you had to rank these 7 upcoming properties in terms of what are you most looking forward to? What is your most anticipated, whether it's from most to least or least to worst, whatever? How would you rank these things?
Well, I'll give you them in descending order. For me, She-Hulk is probably the one I'm least interested in, even though I think it'll probably be a good show because, the character's a lawyer. It's going to be, I can see David Kelly doing it, but I would watch She-Hulk. Miss Marvel, a younger character, not necessarily my thing, even though I like that they're doing the show. It's just, I mean, is it going to be a Buffy-esque series, high school set? I don't know. I don't really know much about it. I think the next one would probably be Hawkeye. And I feel bad saying that because I like Hawkeye. But again, I don't know much about it. Again, is it going to be with his daughter? And then after Hawkeye, I'd probably go Loki, even though I love Loki. We've seen a lot of Loki, and then the next would be Falcon and Winter Soldier, even though I want to see it. Again, we've seen Falcon and Winter Soldier. Number 2 would be WandaVision, because I think it's going to be bananas, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I don't know what it means for the MCU. And John, it probably comes as no surprise to anyone.
There's not. I think you got them all, didn't you? Is there still another one left?
Oh no, John! Come on now. There is one more. There's one more. My main man is coming. You can't really see it because it's reflecting the screen, but you catch my drift. I cannot wait. The Fist of Khonshu's coming, and I cannot wait, John. But the question that I have for Moon Knight is, there's many different iterations of this character. And basically, he's gone crazy. The character that I grew up with in the early 80s was basically a Batman clone. I'll admit it. But with a film noir bent. Not that Batman wasn't always kind of film noir, but Moon Knight sort of embraced that. There was a romance to Moon Knight that I don't think Batman had. And I really liked that early iteration that Doug Mensch and Bill Sienkiewicz did of the character. I don't know if they're going to go that route, or they might just embrace the crazy of later Moon Knight. I don't care. I just want to see Moon Knight. I want to know how they're going to depict his costume on camera. That's mostly, I mean, how do you, a guy in all white, how do you do that? What's his dry cleaning bill? I don't know.
That's actually a good question. How do you think, how much do you think the on-screen costume of Moon Knight is going to be similar? How similar do you think it's going to be to what they got in the comic book? Because Marvel has more than DC in some cases, but Marvel has kind of stuck to, your classic looks of the characters to a degree. Obviously, Wanda, very different and whatever, but how close do you think they're going to stick to the Moon Knight costume?
That's, to me, that's the real question. I whether he's, Mr. Knight, and wearing a white suit, I think a white suit's problematic on a number of different levels. And I'm really curious as to how they're going to depict Moon Knight. I mean, they might go more gray. I really don't know. Or they've had some iterations of the character that have been 2 shades like black and white. So I'm fascinated to see what they're going to do. I just am hoping, me, Hot Toys Moon Knight. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, they don't have one yet? There's not a Hot Toys Moon Knight out there?
Oh, no. I've got a few 1/12 scale figures up here, but not a Hot Toys, not a 1/6. Woo!
All right. I will now give you also in ascending order the ones I am looking forward to the most. Okay. We're going to start off with the one I am least looking forward to. Now, look, it should be said, I am looking forward to all of these to some degree, but the one I am looking forward to least is the Hawkeye series. It's not that I don't think Hawkeye's a great character. It's not that I don't think this is a terrific actor. I do. I've always liked to see Hawkeye and Black Widow. To me, have always been the 2 characters that I love them in the MCU in the roles that they play.
Right.
I don't know that I'm terribly interested in standalone material, and that includes Black Widow or Hawkeye. So I don't know. Maybe it'll end up being my favorite of the bunch. But for right now, the one I am least looking forward to is Hawkeye. Next up, She-Hulk. Now, don't get me wrong. I am very curious to see what they're going to do with this, whether Tatiana is actually going to be playing it or not. There was some question brought in that lately. Whatever. The thing that tempers my excitement for She-Hulk is, Rob, you know I have a hesitancy about derivative characters. I'm not a big fan of Superhero X and Superhero X Jr. And Superhero Y and Superhero Miss Y. Like, I'm not generally a big fan of derivative characters. She-Hulk is the very definition of a derivative character. That doesn't mean she won't be awesome. That doesn't mean the show won't be great. Doesn't mean I'm not looking forward to it. It's just that, any derivative characters usually tempers my expectations and hopes a little bit. So I've got Hawkeye, then I've got She-Hulk. Next one up in the next level thing where I'm starting to get kind of excited here is Moon Knight. Now, the reason I don't have Moon Knight higher on this list is simply because, quite frankly, out of all the characters on the list, Moon Knight is the one I am least familiar with. Like, I've read a little bit of Moon Knight, Rob, but nowhere near the amount of Moon Knight that you have or anything like that. But still a fascinating character. Not the traditional one, but still, I'm looking forward to Moon Knight more than I am Hawkeye or She-Hulk. All right, next one up. I was so surprised when they announced, yet so excited, that they were doing Ms. Marvel. I really first became aware of this character of Kamala Khan because my wife, shortly after they released the first issues, my wife picked them up and really just loved the take on the character. Rob, I often talk about how the MCU, one of the reasons the MCU stays so relevant and so fresh is because their movies change gears. Save the universe in one movie, save the family in another one, right? And this Ms. Marvel character is just a really refreshing change of gears. And so I thought it was really interesting. And so I was really excited when they announced Kamala Khan. All right. Next up, the third most anticipated for me is coming up shortly here, and that is WandaVision. I was intrigued when they first said they were doing WandaVision. I thought that's interesting. It is actually the trailers that have, but this would have been near the bottom of my list prior to any of the trailers coming out. The trailers coming out for this and showing just how weird it's going to be and the type of tone it was going to have, it has bumped it way up the list for me. The end of December cannot get here fast enough for me to start watching this. So WandaVision is my third most anticipated one, which leads us to my second most anticipated one. And you knew it was going to be in the top 3 somewhere, and that's Loki. I love this character. I have loved this character since the first Thor movie. Loved him. Whenever he's out there, even though, one of the weaker MCU films, Thor Dark World, I thought Loki was a standout in it. Tom Hiddleston in this role is absolutely incredible. He was, of course, the runner-up to play Thor, but he didn't get Thor. They gave it to Chris Hemsworth, but they liked him so much, they asked him if he wanted to play Loki. And he has taken this character and run with it and crushed it. And even though I hate the fake deaths in the MCU, and nobody's been given the fake death treatment more than Tom Hiddleston's Loki. I don't know, what are we on? 4 times now Loki's died and has come back? But even though that's true, I still love this character. And that is my second most. And easily for me, next one up is Falcon and Winter Soldier. For a couple of reasons. One, it's just what seems to be the nature of this show, which just appeals to me a lot. 2, the way in the MCU films they have built this really interesting chemistry between Buck and Sam. And I just think that they're going to have a great chemistry. I love the fact that we are getting other auxiliary characters coming back in here, Zemo and stuff like that as well. There's just so much to it that I'm excited about. And how tied in Falcon and Winter Soldier is to Black Widow and whatever happens in Black Widow. Is Falcon and Winter Soldier going to keep getting pushed back until we get Black Widow in theaters first? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they can put Falcon and Winter Soldier out first. I have no idea at this point, but that's my number one. So just once again, in order, from bottom to the top, Hawkeye, She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, WandaVision, Loki, and Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's my particular list of that. But Rob, we are getting close now. They're unlike last year where Disney Plus had nothing to follow up Mandalorian with. This year, Mandalorian ends. we're getting WandaVision starting up. How excited are you at this point, now that we are literally just like 2 months away from WandaVision?
Oh, I'm very excited. I can't wait. It's been too long. I mean, my Marvel MCU hot toys have been tiding me over, whether it's Captain Marvel or the Hulkbuster or whatever, but it's not the same as getting new programming. And I'm really curious to see what they're doing with WandaVision, because it's so off-brand for them. But it seems to be that they're really embracing an aspect from the comics of what happened to Wanda Maximoff, and I'm digging it, dude. I can't wait.
Me too. All right, guys, question is for you. You've got these upcoming Disney Plus shows. How would you rank them? I really want you to do this. Jump into the comment section and let us know, how would you rank in your order of anticipation the upcoming MCU films, now that it actually looks like they're finally going to get one? How would you rank them? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, let's now move on to main topic number 3. And our third and final main topic today gets submitted to us by Edgar Morales, who writes, "Hey, John and Robert. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit here because I'm writing this before Mandalorian has aired, but I wanted to get this into you early and ask what you guys thought of the season premiere. No spoilers, please. Thanks." All right, dude. Oh, no problem. Don't worry about it. No spoilers here. It finally happened. The day had come. Today is the day at midnight. And thank goodness. Last year, they dropped the episodes at 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This year, they actually dropped it at midnight Pacific Standard Time. So me and my wife were able to stay up and watch that first episode. By the way, going to let all you guys know, today at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Ann and I are going to be doing an open spoiler discussion video of Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1. So if you want to come back and join Ann and I for that, we're going to do that at 4 o'clock. Make sure you guys come and join us. Anyway, the episode drops. It comes. That music is there. The very first, if I'm not mistaken, the very first shot we see, Rob, is that shot that was the very first shot in the trailer. Mando with floating Baby Yoda in his little crib thing, emerging out of the darkness on that city street coming out. And I'm like, oh, here we go. And immediately go into the fight club, which is great. Now, this is all stuff that's in the trailer, not giving anything away. I will tell you, though, some general principles here. General principle number 1, I loved this episode. I ate it up, and here's why. The reason I loved this episode, without going into specific story points, the reason I love this episode so much is because as a single episode, it completely embodied what it is I love about this series. And what it is I love about this series is right down to its very core, its very essence. This show, Mandalorian, is an old-time Western. That's what this show is. It is an old-time Western, as Jon Favreau described it from the very first time they announced Mandalorian. This is the story of a gunslinger out in the untamed West. And that's what it was. And this first episode of season 2, Rob, to me, absolutely embodied that. They took they took so many great Western chips, right? So many great Western chips and put them in there. The lone town, the marshal of the town. There's bandits out there, for what I'm talking about. Again, I'm not going to go into specific story details. That's got to be dealt with. I mean, just everything from the way the story progressed. It was nice that it was almost an hour-long introductory episode. That was good to see. I ate it up. Now, listen. One of the things, Rob, that I don't like, that I didn't like about Mandalorian Season 1 was I hate nostalgia porn. I hate pointless nostalgia porn. The last season, when they went to Tatooine, it was a useless episode. It was a completely useless episode. But on top of that, everything was throwing in all this nostalgia porn that had no point. It's like, look, everybody, it's the same spaceport that was in Star Wars. Okay, why does it have to be that one? There's no point. Look, everybody, it's the same cantina Luke was in. Ooh, doesn't that make you excited? Ooh, it's the same one. But what was the point? They didn't need to be that one. There was definitely nostalgia elements in this episode, Rob, but all of them were foundational to the story of it. It wasn't pointless nostalgia porn. It was actually, hey, we've got this story, and it just so happens that it involves these elements that you know and recognize, but they play pivotal parts of what's transpiring in the story of the episode. And when you do that, then to me it becomes really, really enjoyable. I loved this episode. It had some great pop moments for me. It was just the feel of the grittiness of the Western. They didn't overplay. I had two fears, Rob, going into this season. One, they were going to go, oh, look how popular Baby Yoda is with everybody. Let's just make everything about each show have 20 minutes of camera time on Baby Yoda. And they didn't do that, which was great. And my second fear was that they would deviate in season 2 away from that core identity of the show, of it being a gritty Western about a gunslinger out on the frontier. And they didn't. They didn't deviate from it. They dove even more into it. They doubled down on it. And I'm not going to say what it was. Ann and I will talk about it at 4 o'clock later today. But the final shot of the episode, chills and excitement. And I got to tell you, man, I dug it a lot. So that is my complete non-spoiler thing. I went to bed last night very, very happy. Rob, you had a chance. I'm hoping you had your Mandalorian morning today. What was your overall impressions of the episode?
Well, like you, I felt the same way about, at first I'm like, really? They're going back to Tatooine again? But one, I was surprised. I like seeing a certain character from last season again, just quickly. I thought that was fun. But like you, I really loved what they did. Was you learned a lot more about certain elements without getting into it. We meet, I don't want to say, but we learned more about them. It wasn't just
nostalgia elements. They showed nostalgia elements and then gave you a way different look at those elements.
Yeah, they added to the mythology, and I loved all of that. I also am a sucker. I'm a sucker for stories where people that might be on opposite ends of things team up together and maybe go off on, an adventure or something. I also like seeing opposing groups come together, and it really had that great Western feel to it. I'll tell you something else. There's a design element. Somebody had a certain vehicle that they were driving around on that there's a design element from, I'm just going to say it, it's subtle, but from the Phantom Menace. And, if you're a fan of, say, like the Pod Racer video game like I was like, oh, I see what they're doing there. It's a subtle thing, and it's a great little Easter egg. And if you pay attention, it's like, oh, and there was a lot of that in this episode. And I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. However, I have one criticism in that it goes back, it harks back to the idea of the Western element. There's a certain familiarity to the overall story of this episode that we kind of saw elements of last season. And I hope it just felt a little overly familiar. It was fun. The storyline was really fun. I really liked it a lot. But this sort of the Western trope that they were harking back to, it was similar to me as the episode where they take on the Imperial Walker, the Scout Walker from last season.
Right. I love that episode.
I love that episode too. There was a little bit of that in this episode, and that's okay because it's a Western thing. And but overall, I mean, I was smiling ear to ear during the entire episode, and when the final shot, I was like, it was one of those things where when the final shot comes on, it lasts a while.
Yes,
and you're
they linger on it a bit. You're
lingering on it, and then it starts out. It's a great shot, and then there's a reveal in that shot. Bruh, come on! I was just like, oh man. Which you know what? The people that are making this show, Jon Favreau and company, and Dave Filoni and everybody over at Disney, they know what we want. It's just like, if I could equate this to like a drug of choice, this would be pure uncut MDMA. Really great ecstasy. When you take it, you just feel really good. And dude, I just was beaming. What's not to love about this episode? I was smiling the whole time.
And you know what? It's funny too, because when the episode ended, I was like, I totally forgot something, but I was like, because going into the episode, I didn't know who directed episode 1. And so I'm like, and I'm like waiting for the credits to start because I'm like, who directed this one? And I totally forgot that Jon Favreau was actually going to step in and actually direct 1 or 2 of the episodes this year. And so it surprised me, yet didn't surprise me at all to see that Jon Favreau had directed this one.
Right.
And I guess that made sense too, because like I said, I felt like this episode as a 1 episode frame really captured the entire spirit of what Jon Favreau always said he wanted this whole series to be. And so it really should have. And by the way, I don't think it's giving away a spoiler to say, because the name of the episode is The Marshal. That's the name of the episode. So without giving too much away about The Marshal, I love The Marshal. I completely love it. And I don't think we've seen the last of him.
No, I loved him. But I have to say, because I didn't know who directed the episode either, how much fun did Jon Favreau have directing this episode? I mean, if
probably more than he's ever had.
If you grew up, I mean, he's like a contemporary of ours. Anybody who grew up having an original Star Wars fan, this episode had to have been like, I can't even imagine. People must have been hopping around like Mexican jumping beans. You know, those little beans you'd get in the little containers like at this county fair. That would, I think everybody on set would be like that, because this episode must have been so much fun to make. I can't even imagine how much fun the people who made this episode were having, because I was having it as a viewer, but making it, oh my God.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's safe to say that Mandalorian, the season 2 premiere for Robert and I, were both big thumbs up. I mean, I think somebody said it in live chat, but I'll say too, the biggest problem with this episode to me was that it ended. And I had just a ball with it, and I cannot wait. You know, I'm sure not every episode is going to crush it and knock it out of the park, but it's always good when you can lead off with your best foot, and to come out with Jon Favreau directing that premiere, it really nailing the essence of the show. Some great reveals, some great grittiness to it, some great character moments, a great reveal. I couldn't ask for anything more, Rob. I just could not ask for anything more. Loved it. So the question is for you guys, what did you think if you had a chance to see the Mandalorian season 2 premiere? What did you think about it? Did you like it as much as we did? Maybe there are a few other things with it that maybe bothered you a little bit that we weren't noticing. Whatever it was, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. And once again, guys, don't forget, Ann and I are going to be doing our Mandalorian Season 1 premiere open spoiler discussion video later today at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you want to come and join us, make sure you come on back and join us then. All right, guys. With all of that down and out of the way, let's now move on and start taking your live questions. You guys have been firing in a bunch. And again, the way to get it on is go to the description of this video, and at the very top of the description, you're going to see the tip link. It's streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. You'll be getting your question or comment on the show if it's reasonable. And of course, you'll be supporting this show at the same time. And all of us here, thank you guys for participating. All right, let's now jump into it, shall we? We're going to get things started off here with a question from Sam Fisher, who writes, after seeing concept art of Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner and Liv Tyler's Betty Ross working in a lab from the new Wakanda Files book, what is the likelihood we will see Liv Tyler's Betty Ross in the new She-Hulk series, and would she interact with Ruffalo? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Sam. Rob, this is an interesting one because, number one, I haven't seen the image that he's talking about. I haven't seen this image. As of right now, technically speaking, Mark Ruffalo is not signed himself to appear in this show. Like the last time we heard from Ruffalo about it, he said there's been some talk, but we haven't had any discussions on it for a while. I don't know what's happening. So there is a possibility here that even Ruffalo himself is not in it. The question about Liv Tyler's Betty Ross has been brought up before, because even though there is a different actor playing the role of Bruce, this is the same Bruce that Ed Norton played in his Incredible Hulk movie. It's the same Bruce. Not the same one from the Ang Lee Hulk movie, but it's the same Bruce that Edward Norton played. So, Liv Tyler, Betty Ross is out there somewhere. Could we see her come back? Rob, think we could see Liv Tyler pop up in the She-Hulk series?
Thunderbolt Ross has. You know, I mean, he's been in the MCU. You got William Hurt came back. So why not? Absolutely.
All right. Next up, we've got PNW Girl, who tipped in $20. Thank you so much for supporting the channel on that level. Patreon member, and thank you for being a Patreon member. I've heard quite a bit of buzz about a potential Snyderverse if Snyder Cut is successful. What do you predict we could see in a future Snyderverse? Would love to hear what you would like to see and what you think we might see. Well, I mean, we've addressed this a few times. The base thing of it is this. I don't know why anybody's expecting people who didn't like, let's face it, unlike me, who, other than Sucker Punch, I've liked everything Zack Snyder has done, particularly Man of Steel. And I like Batman versus Superman, all that kind of stuff. But the reality is, he had done a couple of DC movies, and both of them, half the critics and half the audiences hated it. I don't see why anybody has any expectations that, unless Zack Snyder has completely changed the way that he wants to approach DC material, I don't see why it's going to be any different. People like me who liked it are going to like it, but half the critics and half the audiences are going to hate it. That's just Zack Snyder's DC material. That's what it is. Those of us who like it are going to like it. Those who don't. I don't see why anybody has any expectation that all of a sudden magically, you know, all these people who hated Man of Steel inexplicably, but all these people who hated Man of Steel and all these people, they're suddenly magically, now they're going to love what Zack Snyder does in the DCU. I just don't see that happening. But that said, Rob, we live in a world where Jamie Foxx is coming back as Elektra, something that we never thought would happen. We are living in a world where Ben Affleck is coming back, however small, to play Bruce Wayne again, something we thought would never happen. We live in a world right now where seemingly ridiculous ideas ain't so ridiculous. Look, right now, my expectation is this is a one and done. I don't have an expectation that we're going to see more Snyderverse after this HBO special. That's my expectation. But that doesn't mean that's where I believe possibilities end. We live in a world right now where the possibilities, the scope of what is possible has become a lot wider than it was just a couple of months ago. A hell of a lot wider. So right now I'm in a position where I do not expect to see anything else from this after it, but I know that it is not an impossibility. So that's where I'm at right now with that. Rob, what's your take on this right now?
Well, I'm with you. You know, I mean, Michael Keaton Batman, Ben Affleck Batman in a Flash movie. I mean, come on. I think anything can happen. You know, like the old Mickey Mouse Club. Wednesday was surprise day. And now that Disney is and Warner Brothers and Sony are making things that I never dreamed of being possible. We live in a world where anything can happen, and there's few things that I've heard lately that I don't think could happen now. Anything could happen. Nothing is off the table. Nothing.
Yeah. Now, again, there's a difference between what I think is possible and what I think is likely. Like right. Those can be two very, very different things. What is possible versus what is likely. But it's possible. I mean, it is absolutely possible. So, but I don't expect it to happen. I wouldn't put any money on it happening, but there you go. All right, let's move on here. Next up, Drake, and again, thanks for saying that in PNW Girl. Drake Lively writes, "Hey John, forgive the off-topic question, but I was always curious. When companies send gadgets and stuff to YouTubers like MKBHD, and by the way, if you're into tech or anything at all, MKBHD is definitely one of the guys. MK, Linus, a lot of good guys like that out there. Anyway, MKBHD, etc. Do they get to keep the stuff or have them return it to the company? I don't get any proper answers, hence I'm asking. All right, so a lot of YouTubers, whether they're in the movie field like we are, or whether they're in the tech field like MKBHD or, like I said, Linus Tech Tips or the Twit Network. Sometimes we get things sent to us to review or just to promote something. Like when the Lego 2 movie was coming out, the studio, I think it was Warner Brothers, sent me this giant crate of all this awesome Lego stuff just to promote the movie. I didn't have to send it back. It was mine to keep. Unfortunately, I didn't like the second Lego movie very much, but whatever, it was what it was. Sometimes they send, physical discs, and those things you don't have to send back. Sometimes tech guys get some neat little products sent to them, and they don't have to send them back. What I generally find is the things you need to send back, and let me bring this up quick. Let me get it all set here. The things you do have to send back are the things that are really expensive. For example, this is going to bore some of you guys, forgive me, but I'm just going to nerd out on this. A new camera has just come out, for example. A $3,500 camera, and that's without a lens. A $3,500 camera without a lens called the Sony A7S III. And believe me when I tell you, me and Jonathan Voico drool whenever we look at this camera. I won't go into why.
Tasty looking camera, man.
Oh, dude, when you go into the specs, this is a sexy camera, man. This is a sexy camera. I want this camera so bad. But at any rate, so what Sony did was they sent out review models of this camera out to a bunch of the tech influence YouTubers. But because it is a $3,500 camera without a lens, with a lens, you're probably adding another $1,000. They had to then send them back, right? So there's no one hard and fast rule to what happens with review units. Generally speaking, when it's a inexpensive thing, you just keep it because it's more hassle to pack it back up and ship it back. When it's something really big and expensive, generally those are review units you send back. Again, there's no one hard and fast rule, but that's kind of generally how it goes. But if any of you guys want to send me a Sony A7S III, you will be my best friend. Just saying. Just say if any of you happen to have one laying around and you want to send one my way. I'm not saying I'm getting an erection thinking about this camera, but I'm not denying I'm getting an erection thinking about this camera. If you'd like to send one out to me. All right. Let's move on here. Ahmed Z writes, hey, John, did you hear episode 1 of The Mandalorian season 2 is going to be 1 hour? So obviously this got sent in just before it aired. Where do we go here? Did you hear the episode 1 of The Mandalorian season 2 is going to be a 1 hour special? My question is, if the pandemic stretches out for years to come, how will Disney structure / release future MCU shows like She-Hulk without releasing Black Widow? Here's the thing. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Right now, we don't know how connected in Black Widow is with any of the other shows they have coming out. It's a Kevin Feige thing, so obviously there's some level of connection, but are they so heavily connected that Black Widow has to hit theaters before we release this show, or this show? Listen, if this thing doesn't stretch through 2021, and I do not believe it will, I believe they're going to have something, an answer to this, depending how fast and low, or how fast or how slow will depend a little bit on the election results coming out. But I don't believe this is going to push through 2021. I believe Kevin Feige is a man of great patience. And it is not out of the realm of possibility to me that Kevin Feige and his bosses at Disney who trust him would be willing to push it an additional 6 months. I don't think that goes outside of the purview of the patience of Kevin Feige. So I don't believe this is going to stretch out, like, say, for instance, to the end of 2021 or anything like that. So I don't think it's going to be a player here. Rob, though, I know this is something we discuss a lot, but like, let's say for argument's sake that Black Widow can't come out. Oop, I brought out the wrong image. Sorry about that. Black Widow can't come out. I'm sorry. I'm still just
looking at that camera, though.
I'm just still thinking about this camera. Once again, guys,
tasty.
the Sony A7S III, not the A Sony 7 III. It's the A Sony 7S III. Don't forget the S. A7S3. Just want to throw that out there. Okay, now let's go back to the question at hand. Rob, theoretically speaking, if for whatever reason Black Widow cannot hit theaters by the end of 2021, what does Kevin Feige do with these shows? Do you think at some point he just goes to hell with it, just release the shows regardless, or does he push the shows back even further? What do you think the answer to that predicament is?
Well, I mean, I think because Black Widow is a prequel, unless there's some framing device we don't know about, and that's very possible, maybe they can get away with it. Because the thing is, Black Widow's, I'm sure it's finished. So they would have to go in and rework certain things, but I don't think. I think the MCU right now. I don't know how much of Loki was shot, but we know that Captain America and Winter Soldier had been in production. WandaVision is obviously finished. It's ways that they can get, and these shows were made for Disney Plus, so it's ways to keep the MCU relevant. I mean, you know what? Even the most popular thing, audiences are fickle, out of sight, out of mind, and we haven't seen an MCU movie in quite a while, actually, which is great because that means I've been able to catch up on Hot Toys. But it's something that I think they're not going to curtail showing what they have finished on Disney Plus if they have to wait for a movie. I don't think it's going to hold up everything. I think they're going to let those shows roll on.
All right, let's move on here. Next up, we've got That Guy writes, "Hey, John, been watching the show almost daily since the first Avengers film, but first time writing in." Well, thanks for writing in, man, and thanks for being around for that long. "Just wanted your thoughts on the news that dropped last week of Jake Gyllenhaal starring and Denis Villeneuve directing a miniseries for HBO." Yeah, that's something, because of timing, we never got around to talking about, Rob, is, of course, the news did come out that they're going to be doing a miniseries together. Now, of course, these two have worked together before to great effect when that movie they did it with Hugh Jackman as well. Prisoners is what it's called. Intrigued, but I really don't know enough at this point. Like, to be honest with you, I didn't become enraptured with it because right now when I think Denis Villeneuve, I'm so locked on Dune right now. I am so locked on Dune that it's like a news like that hits and I'm like, wow, that's a great pairing because we've already seen them work together before and it's great. But I just can't get past, I'm just waiting for Dune, and that kind of blocks my enthusiasm. I don't know. Rob, you heard about this. What are your thoughts on this pairing again?
What's not to love? You know, I'm down. I think it's why not? Bring it on. You know, it goes back to everything that we're getting that is good. You know, I think. I mean,
back to everything that is good.
I mean, one of the things, you know, John, the 2020 has been all kinds of a storm, a shit storm, whatever you want to call it. However, as far as entertainment is going on, you know, the smile that the Mandalorian put on my face, The Boys season 2, I enjoyed. We're getting, there's so much interesting stuff. Utopia is something I've just been watching, which I like. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's happening that I am enjoying. So, you know, why not? Anything that's cool that's going to happen again, bring it on.
All right, let's move on here. Next up is Shadow Jester. And Shadow Jester writes, "John, regarding the Amazon issue, I get that Amazon may lose the license, but didn't the studio receive a cut of that money? So couldn't one argue that we have paid the true owners of the film, so shouldn't we never lose access to it, even if it swaps platforms?" No, that's not how contracts work. That's not how licenses work. Rob, of course, we talked on the show yesterday about the fact that, you know, Amazon is being sued right now by a woman for the fact that at some point down the line, because in the user agreement, in the end user agreement with Amazon Prime, it stipulates that at some point, like, you get an indefinite license to this movie when you buy it, but at some point down the line, the contract stipulates the owners of the movie may exercise some of their legal rights where we lose the right to do that. And if that's the case, we can't show you the movie anymore. Now, Amazon has filed for a dismissal because, number one, they said none of the movies that this woman has ever bought are no longer available to her. So she has not suffered any harm. And number two, since she's filed this lawsuit, she has bought 13 more movies on Amazon. So
yes,
she's clearly not worried about it very much. So we talked about this the other day. And by the way, this is true also of Google Play. This is true of iTunes. This is true of Vudu. It's true of any of the streaming platforms. They don't actually own the movies. Unless it's like Lord of the Rings, the show that Amazon is itself producing. That's different. But for the most part, these streaming platforms you buy digitally from, they don't actually own the movies. So if sometime theoretically in the future, Warner Brothers decides to pull Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, they find some legal loophole that they can pull that. The way the licenses work is that, no, just because Amazon has to kick back some of that money to Warner Brothers, that does not give you ownership of it. But Rob, we were also quick to point out yesterday that technically speaking, as ridiculous as it sounds, when you buy a Blu-ray and DVD, technically speaking, you still don't own it. You can't do whatever you want with that disc.
Right.
And so that's kind of the thing that's in play right now. Rob, I'm curious what you think on this thing, because to me, my thought on it was this, was that in the 10 years that I have personally been buying digital movies, when I go into my digital locker, I still have them all. I've never lost a single one. They're all still there. However, of all the DVDs, VHS tapes, and Blu-rays that I have owned over the years, the number of those that I no longer am in possession of, or I've lost, or have been damaged, or been whatever, I can't even count. Like I personally can't even count. And the other illustration, I talked about that one conversation you and I had yesterday, is yes, in theory, some movie in the future may get lost to you, but in theory, Rob's house, God forbid, could catch on fire tomorrow, and he would lose thousands of discs like that. So and the other illustration I made is this: like when I buy something, Rob, like an electric razor, I drop $60 on an electric razor. I know at some point in the future, you know what? I'm going to have to buy another electric razor. At some point, I'm going to have to buy another. This is not going to last me my lifetime, and I'm going to have to get another one. And if one or two or three out of the 400 or 500 movies I have in my digital locker suddenly disappear, and I got to drop another $15 12 years from now to get that movie again, I don't know. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal to me. But Rob, as somebody who is such a strong proponent for physical media and all the advantages of physical media, it was really unfortunate you weren't here yesterday to talk about the show. What's your kind of take on this whole thing?
Well, I talked about this too on my show. I mean, look, to me, when you buy something digitally and you've bought it from someone and it exists as a file, it's still sort of tied to where you got it from. You know, whether you're downloading it Apple Music or whether it's Spotify or wherever you're buying stuff from or just listening to stuff from and have playlists. Like I made a Spotify playlist I listened to like 5 years ago, and things that were in my playlist drop out. Like the Spotify has lost the license for that particular album or whatever, so it's just gone. And it pisses me off because I'm like, wait a minute, where'd this Tangerine Dream piece of music go for my play? Oh, they don't have the rights anymore. And that's just par for the course. Now, for me, I like physical media because it's still the best delivery system in terms of picture and sound quality. That's all I care about with physical media. But the other thing I care about is that, you know, there's a lot of obscure movies. There's movies that the license for the lower budget or things that get thrown around from studio to studio, a lot of low budget horror stuff, low budget genre stuff, cult movies. They come and they go. And that would bother me, buying things digitally. Like if you were an ultraviolet guy, you'd be SOL right now because that service is gone. Yeah, but with all this is a good example. The ultraviolet, though, people who had the licenses for those, they were able to access a lot of those other movies they were able to transfer those out to other services. Yeah,
so
which is great.
That was one of the fail safes. Which is great.
And I think, look, for the most part, it's not going to affect people much. I just like having my physical media because I like collecting. You know, and not only that, but my collection collectively is sort of a reflection of my own subconscious. I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at 4 huge shelves of Blu-rays and 4K discs and a few DVDs, and I'm like, that's my personality. If you wanted to distill my personality with some weird algorithm and punch in all the titles of all the movies I own, you could do it. That's why. But I don't think it's that much of a problem. When it's going to be a problem is when some totalitarian regime takes over your country and goes into your Amazon wish lists or playlists or download lists and purges you. And who knows what they'll do. I mean, that's when it gets scary. But right now, not that big a deal.
Yeah, I just think a lot of us are getting too wound up over a theoretical thing that hasn't actually happened. And even if it does happen, it's probably going to happen on such a small percentage of a scale that it's inconsequential. I get it, the principle. Rob, the one thing I said, though, about yesterday that I think these digital services need to change is, like, when you open up a page, like let's say I'm looking at, let's say I want to get Outlaw Jonesy Wales, right?
Good title.
And I want to get this Eastwood movie. And I open it up, whether it's in iTunes or the Google Play Store or whatever. There's always 2 buttons, right? Rent, which is a word we all totally get.
Yep.
And what's the word on the other button?
Purchase.
Purchase. And in our understanding of that, when you say buy or purchase, we associate that with the idea of, oh, that is now mine. That is now mine. It can never be taken away. It can never have anything happen to it, even though it's unlikely that anything ever will happen to it. But still, it's possible it could. And that's against our understanding of purchase. I think these streaming services have to more clearly communicate what it is. An explanation buried in an end user agreement is not sufficient. That is not good enough. I think they need to find a way to be much more clear that, hey, you are buying access to this movie we have, but understand 17 years from now, that access, we might lose access to the movie ourselves. So, but hopefully if that ever happens, then the same thing that happened with Ultraviolet will happen again. It's like, okay, you had legitimately purchased a license to this Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey movie, a movie I did not buy, by the way. This is all theoretical. You had access to this, so that can transfer over to this other service or what have you. But I don't know. It's a big issue, and I think it's going to come up more and more as we see more things connected with it pop up. I just wanted to make sure we got your 2 cents on that, Rob, because you're so connected to this. All right. Next up, we have Brian Reynolds, who writes, "Hey, John. Well, shit, Mandalorian Season 2 is almost upon us." This was obviously sent in just before the show. Oh, correction, almost upon y'all. I'm from the Philippines and no Disney Plus. I am extremely jealous. I hate piracy, but if by next year we don't have Disney Plus yet, God help me, I'm stealing it. Sorry. Rob, this we had to talk about this last year when Mandalorian Season 1 came out. This is a predicament because you and I are both extremely anti-piracy. Like, yes. We very hardcore anti-piracy. Get out of here with this garbage nonsense of, well, it's not really stealing. No, it is, and you're a thief. I mean, yes. Piracy is piracy. But this is a very, very interesting situation. We talked about this with Season 1 of Mandalorian. Because you had, when Disney Plus was not available in a lot of territories, and it's still not available everywhere, you had audiences that you are marketing this product to that had no access to the product. Mm-hmm. You are advertising a product where you have audiences going, here, like that Fry meme, they take my money, shut up and take. You have audiences around the world. It's like, no, I'm willing to buy it. Here's my money. I want to buy it. I want to buy this thing. And you are giving them no avenue to buy it. And yet, they have to sit there and watch all these ads. New Star Wars show, everybody. Look at the shiny new Star Wars show. Can I have it? Nope, you can't have it, but look at all these great trailers for it. That creates a dilemma that I honestly don't have an answer for. Like, as anti-piracy as I am, I'm like, damn, no judgment from me if somebody pirates it, because If you're in a country like the Philippines or wherever else where it's like, hey, here's my money. I want to pay Disney. I want to give you this money. You created a product that to me has value and is worth me forking over a little bit of money for, and I'm willing to give it to you, but you are not providing me with any way of legitimately accessing it. I'm not saying it's cool to pirate it. I'm just saying it's a real gray area that poses a conundrum, and I don't blame you, Brian Reynolds. I don't blame you. Like Ryan or Rob, what's your response to that?
Well, I have to tell you, back in 2005, I was invited to a film festival in Israel to show a movie I'd made. And there were a lot of people. I talked to a lot of people. Everybody was really nice. But everybody came up, not everybody, but I must have been asked 25 times by people about piracy. And the Israelis, this was in Tel Aviv, they all felt guilty about ripping stuff off. And I heard the same thing from all of them. They all said variations of, I would love to pay for this, but Israel's a small country. We're not exactly at the forefront of the major studios' minds when they're putting out new movies on physical media or whatever. We just can't get stuff unless we import it. It's hard, and so you can download things off the internet. And it was funny because they were all so, well, I'm sorry I'm doing this, but I would like to buy it. But they couldn't get it. And it's just like you said, we're now marketing to the world. Disney Plus is marketing to the world. The Mandalorian, it's Star Wars. If you love Star Wars, and who doesn't love Star Wars, it's across the planet. And if you're not going to make Star Wars available to people in certain countries, well, we live in a world where they're going to rip it off. I don't believe in piracy in any way, shape, or form. But like even life's too short. What if I walk outside and get hit by a bus? I'm not going to wait 2 or 3 years to see The Mandalorian if I can download it from the Pirate Bay and see it right now.
Is that still a thing? Is Pirate Bay still a thing?
I have no idea.
You just took me back, man. That's nostalgia there.
What do I know about the Pirate Bay? But I honestly believe that. I mean, as well as I do how bad piracy made John Schnepp feel. When he saw that his movie was stolen 1 million more times than he actually got to sell it. And, you make movies hoping to make some money so you can make another movie. And that was the one thing that John Schnepp was a pretty happy guy. We had a lot of fun together. And the one conversation that we had repeatedly that bummed him out was how many times his own community ripped off his movie. Yeah, and that really bothered him. And I don't believe in piracy because, like you said, it's stealing. But I don't know what people are supposed to do. It's Star Wars. You got to make it available globally. And I understand what Disney Plus wants to do. But in a place where you can't get it, what do they expect?
Well, Rob, I know you're not the biggest fan of Star Trek Discovery, but let's look at Star Trek Discovery, for example. CBS All Access was coming out with this new Star Trek show, Star Trek Discovery. CBS All Access was not in every country. So what did CBS All Access do? They said, hey, other services that are in those countries, would you like to license our show so you can show it? So that's why you had some countries where CBS All Access wasn't, but there was Netflix. So in that country, CBS All Access would license Star Trek Discovery to Netflix in that country so people in that country could still legitimately pay for and buy and watch Star Trek Discovery. I get where Disney's coming from because they make Mandalorian so people will sign up for Disney Plus. But I think they should have taken that approach that CBS All Access did. It's like, hey, look, I get it. You can't be everywhere right now. But after 6 months of Mandalorian coming out, if it's not available in some countries, maybe look at leasing it out to another service so you still make money. And those fans are able to get this content that you keep telling them about. And yeah. You're right. Star Wars is such a global property, Rob. I think you're absolutely right. That's definitely should have done it for that. Anyway, sorry. So let's keep moving here. Cam on Camera writes, I just watched the new trailer that dropped today for The Crown Season 4. And well, gotta tell you, Rob, that is not a show that's for me, but my wife got me into it. It's a really good show.
It is a really good show.
And wow, Emma Corrin, who is going to play Diana, nails The Office and looks so much like her. Gillian Anderson is going to crush it as Margaret Thatcher. November 15th cannot come soon enough. Again, Rob, this is just a show that is definitely not for me. And by the way, when Claire Foy left the show, Claire Foy, who of course played Queen Elizabeth in the early seasons, When she was leaving, I thought, well, that's it for the show. But it continued to be great.
Yeah.
And when I heard Gillian Anderson was going to be playing Thatcher, I'm like, what? Oh, God, actually, that's kind of brilliant. Have you had a chance to see this trailer yet? And what are your expectations? Yeah, what did you think of the trailer?
I think it looks great. I mean, this is an A-list show. And, you know, dealing with 20th century history, it's fascinating. I love it. Now we're up to a point where we've lived through this part of British history. And it's going to give me backstory to, you know, my own life, what I'd seen from afar. I was never a royals watcher, but I've always been fascinated by stuff that's happened in the monarchy here. And I think it's great. It's A-list all the way. It's fascinating to watch. And by the way, like you said, Gillian Anderson is crushing it as Margaret Thatcher. Crushing it.
Yeah, it looks great. All right, well, next up, we've got Chris Hunt, who writes, has anyone ever seen Back to the Future Parts 2 and 3 on purpose? Or does everyone just catch bits and pieces of it on cable? Pretty sure I've seen all of both movies, but it's taken decades. I mean, look, honestly, we've talked about this before. The Back to the Future trilogy is beloved, but really, to me, it's all subjective, of course, but to me, Back to the Future is that one movie. I'm not saying 2 and 3 aren't good, but 2 and 3 are not the first one to me. Rob, I know you and I were just talking about this the other day about it, but I don't know that I go so far as to say, has anybody ever watched 2 and 3 on purpose? I think they have, but to me, there's just such a difference between a couple of good movies like Back to the Future 2 and 3 and like truly one of the beloved classics that we all hold on to dearly for the rest of our lives, like the first Back to the Future. So I got to admit, Rob, when I think of Back to the Future, I do not think in terms of trilogies. I don't think of when I think of Star Wars, I think of the original trilogy. When I think of Lord of the Rings, I think of the trilogy. When I think of Back to the Future, I don't think of the trilogy. How does your mind work on that?
I'm right there with you. As a matter of fact, though, I mean, it's right there. I just got the 4Ks of Back to the Future, all three of them. It came out the new versions. But to me, Back to the Future is one of the great screenplays ever written. And I love it so much. And the other two movies are kind of like, they're fun addendums, you know, but I don't think of them as a trilogy either. Kind of like, I mean, I hate to say this, I feel the same way about the three Back to the Future movies as I feel about the Matrix movies, in that you have the Matrix and you had Back to the Future, and then you got these. They made these two other movies kind of concurrently, and they're fun. I mean, Back to the Future 2 is pretty creative and bananas, and Back to the Future 3 is cute going into the Old West. But to me, it's so far removed from the original film. I mean, the original film is it's just such a great piece of filmmaking and writing and direction and acting. It's so much fun. And the other two films are these outlandish kind of riffs that take you away from what made the first Back to the Future great, is that it was so grounded. You know, it's all about Hill Valley and what's going on with Marty McFly, as opposed to multiple time frames and going back to the Old West and let's make a Western instead of, you know, it's just a different thing. So I agree, right. Even though there is a Back to the Future trilogy, to me there's Back to the Future and then these other two interesting movies that you can watch if you want to do so, but they don't add anything to Back to the Future.
All right, let's move on here. Art Teacher Movie Fan writes, hello, John. So excited to see your documentary. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. I can't wait to show it to everybody. I miss the movie theaters and that popcorn so much. My question is, do you think movie theaters will downsize or get fancier if they survive this time? Thank you, and I love the show. Undoubtedly, they will continue to get, I don't want to use the word fancier, but they will continue to get grander. You know, I think, you know, because one of the things that movie theaters started to realize about a decade ago, and it takes a long time to make the transition, but you've seen them making this transition, is that part of going to the movies, a big part of the attraction of going to the movies is not just watching a film. It's also the experience of a night out. You're going to an event, you're going to something like that. And that's why you saw movie theaters, particularly AMC, but Regal has been doing it as well too. AMC went through a very long and expensive renovation phase of completely renovating their theaters, putting in the leather recliners, putting in the better sound systems, making these grander experiences going. And they have to do that because you're not just selling watching a movie, you're selling an overall experience. And a part of that has to be that. Now, the second big transition, Rob, that I would argue is the even bigger transition for movie theaters, has been the transition that just begun before the pandemic, which is the transition of going from single transaction experiences, buy a movie ticket to see a movie, to a subscription-based service that the movie theater is becoming, AMC A-List, Regal Unlimited, all these sorts of things. That is really the next big metamorphosis that we're already in the midst of right now. But yeah, I definitely think we're still going to continue to see movie theaters. They have to continue this trend of becoming a better overall experience besides just the movie it is that they're playing. Rob, what do you think is once the pandemic's done? Because let's face it, money's going to be an issue for these theaters, even when they open, if they open back up again. But do you think they'll try to downscale, or do you think they'll continue on trying to improve the facilities?
I think they're going to try and continue to improve the facilities because they need to get people. You know, people have now become very used to and very comfortable being home with their electronics and whatever they've got. I'm sure a lot of people that had money have upgraded their home theaters or their screens. So I think movie theaters are going to have to up their game as well. So we're going to see more of that, even though there's going to be social distancing and all that. But they're going to have to get people to come. They got to provide an experience you cannot get at home. Like those Dolby theaters that AMC built. Those are great. I mean, man, those are great places to see movies, I'll tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, next up, Caleb writes, I know you've probably answered this 1,000 times, so I'll make it 1,001. What is it about the Ahsoka character you hate so much? It's just an annoying, useless character that gets force-fed every time. You know, the funny thing is Dave Filoni has made a couple of other really fantastic female characters in Sabine Wren and Hera. I mean, Hera's probably my favorite character that Dave Filoni's come up with. I love the Hera character, but I really like the Sabine Wren. But it's just that character started off bad and then just became, to me, so obvious that Dave Filoni was so obsessed with this one character that the character to me became forced on you in everything. No pun intended, forced. But hey, listen, a lot of people love the character. A lot of people love the character, and that's great. More power to you. I think it's a total waste of time, although I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that the idea of an Ahsoka Tano being played by Rosario Dawson doesn't appeal to me. I mean, I'd be straight up lying to you if I told you that didn't appeal to me. It does. I think Rosario Dawson is fantastic, and I think that's actually a pretty good fit. So while I really don't like that character in particular, I gotta say this iteration of the character that we're going to see in one episode of Mandalorian Season 2, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I was looking forward to it. I am. But I think he's made better characters, like Sabine, like Hera. But anyway, that's just me. All right, next up, Willow writes, when Whedon was first hired to reshoot Justice League, you said it was a win-win scenario for him because if the film's good, he gets credit. If it's bad, Snyder gets the blame. In hindsight, do you think it was still good for him to take on the job? In hindsight, I don't know. I mean, look, it was, Rob, we've talked about this before. Joss Whedon was faced with a near impossible situation. There are still some people that act like Joss Whedon made the decision to change everything about the movie. It was Warner Brothers that brought in Joss Whedon and said, and mandated to him, you need to change this because we don't like it. People keep forgetting that, or they keep pretending like that's not what happened. That's what happened. Warner Brothers didn't like the movie at the time that Zack Snyder was making, whether they were right or wrong. They didn't like the movie he was making. They brought in Joss Whedon specifically with the mandate, we want you to change all this. And by the way, make all these changes and we're not moving the release date. Go.
Yep.
And at the time, yeah, I saw it. I saw it as it's a win-win. It's a win either way for Joss Whedon because if it works out great, wonderful. He'll get a whole ton of credit. If it doesn't work out, well, it was an impossible situation and he can't possibly get the blame. But, you know, not everybody's rational and some people want to pass on blame. So I don't know. In hindsight, maybe it wasn't he should have turned it down. maybe he shouldn't have taken on the job. But, he was going to be building a long-term relationship with Warner Brothers. He's doing this HBO series with Warner Brothers right now that looks kind of interesting. But I don't know, long-term, in hindsight's always 2020, probably wasn't. Yeah. He probably should have just said, nope, let some other sucker do this. Because, I think for a lot of Snyder fans, Joss Whedon became the scapegoat to them. Even though he was doing what he was mandated to do with limited resources and no time. So I don't know. So probably was Rob. Do you think ultimately maybe he should have just turned the job down when Warner Brothers went to him with it?
I don't know if he could have. We're having a relationship. I mean, you get into a situation where it was an impossible position to be put in, and they probably backed up a ton of money because, after all, he did direct 2 Avengers movies, which both made $1.5 billion. So it's like Joss got to get paid. And I'm sure that they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So it was just an unfortunate situation. I think the studio should never have allowed that. They should have just let Joss finish let Zack Snyder finish and move the release date. I know they couldn't. And look, everybody was they were all jockeying for their AT&T bonus pay. It was an unfortunate situation that was fueled by a coming merger. So there was a lot of things at play.
It's a situation where the ball was dropped so many times because it goes all the way back to before they started shooting. When Rob, you remember this, when Batman versus Superman came out and thudded for a lot of people. There was a lot of people in Warner Brothers who wanted to remove Zack Snyder from the upcoming movie. They hadn't started shooting yet at the time, but they were literally only weeks away from starting production on Justice League. And there was a lot of Warner Brothers execs who said, this isn't working. He's done 2 films. They both, in their eyes, underperformed, even though they were both profitable, by the way. And Man of Steel was magnificent. But to them, it was, he's done 2 films so far. Half the people hate it. It's not bringing in the revenue that we want. It's not doing this and this. We don't think Zack Snyder should direct this next movie. Let's remove him. Then there were the other execs in Warner Brothers who were like, we are literally weeks away from this starting a shooting. It's going to be an extremely expensive thing for us to suddenly swap out directors. Let's let him go with it. One of 2 things should have happened. Either A, they should have removed Zack Snyder before he started shooting Justice League. If you had that many people at the company who were uncomfortable with it, they should have just removed him before he started shooting. But if you're not going to do that, then you just let him run with it. If you're not going to pull him off before shooting starts and you want him to start shooting, then at that point, they should have just let him go with it.
I agree.
And if he had to step away, I mean, we all know they wanted to remove him despite the stuff that went on with his family. But then if you had to bring in another director, to finish off the post-production and everything, then just bring in a director to finish what Zack did. I think it was a mistake on their part to say, A, we're going to leave him on the movie, and then B, when the movie was already shot, make the decision that we at Warner Brothers want to change most of this, so let's bring in another director to change it all and not give him any reasonable amount of money to do it and not change the release date because we want to get us execs want to get our bonuses before the AT&T merger. It's just that the ball was dropped so many times before you even got to that movie hitting the theaters. But anyway, Rob, listen, we kept you overtime. We know you got things you got to do. But in the meantime, dude, where can people follow you and your adventures online?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett. Find me on Twitter at BurnettRM or my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, where our Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseurs Film Festival is running through December 1st. You can make a film just like John Campea told you and submit it to our festival.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right, sir. Have a good weekend.
Have a great weekend, man. I'll talk to you soon.
I'll see you later.
All right, guys, that is, of course, the great Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Make sure you guys check him out. All right, but we still have some time here, so let's keep on rolling here with your questions. All right, Damo Davies writes, greetings from the UK. So which of the 3 Dark Lords is your favorite? Dark Lord of the Sith, I don't even have to keep reading. Dark Lord of the Sith, Vader is the greatest of whatever it is you're going to mention. Dark Lord if you're going to say that. Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Sidious. Oh, so not Vader, Darth Sidious from Star Wars. The Dark Lord Voldemort from Harry Potter, or the Dark Lord Sauron from Lord of the Rings. Ooh, okay, so it's not Vader. So, Well, I know what my wife Anne would say. Anne's favorite Star Wars character is actually Sidious. Palpatine is Anne's favorite character, Star Wars character. And I love Palpatine, I do, but I'm going to go, well, you know what? Sauron, he never does anything. He's just there, you know? It's just, oh, there's the eye looking around. I'm going to go Sidious as well. I'm going to go Sidious. I'm not really a Potterhead, although I do enjoy the Harry Potter movies, so I'm going to go with Sidious personally. All right, next up, Damo Davies also writes, out of the big three slasher maniacs, Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and Michael Myers, which is your favorite and which would you least like to meet down a dark alley this Halloween? Well, Freddy Krueger in the real world is a wuss, so I'm not worried about Freddy Krueger in the real world, down a physical dark alley. So I'm not worried about that. The one I would least want to meet is Jason Voorhees. I mean, he's clearly a supernatural character. So Jason is the one. I'd say my favorite though is probably Freddy. Freddy's probably my favorite because there's a lot more you can do with Freddy. He actually talks. So I think Freddy will probably be my favorite, but the one I would least want to run into is Jason. Yeah, Jason's the last one I want to walk into. All right, Dame also writes, I know you mentioned that Amy Adams is one of the great actresses without an Oscar to her name yet. That is true. She is amazing. But I feel that Michelle Pfeiffer is also very worthy of this accolade and has paid her dues in the industry for a longer time. Just my thoughts. Yeah, Michelle, listen, you're not going to get any argument out of me that Michelle Pfeiffer isn't Hollywood royalty. If I'm not mistaken, she has 3 Academy Award nominations, 2 for Best Actress, 1 for Best Supporting Actress. So she has 3 nominations to her name. Michelle Pfeiffer is a goddess. Period. End of sentence. Michelle Pfeiffer's a goddess. Now, would I still give that crown of Best Actress right now to not have an Academy Award out of all the actresses working today? Would I still give that crown to Amy Adams? Yes. I still give Amy Adams the nod there. I still give her the edge. But again, you will get no argument from me that Michelle Pfeiffer is an absolute goddess. Absolutely. 3 Academy, if I'm not mistaken, 3 Academy nominations without a win, but I'd still slightly give that edge to Amy Adams. That's just me. All right, Scott Brown writes, my favorite movie scene of all time is in Terminator when Kyle explains to Sarah in the car what Arnold is, and I saw this movie when I was 6, and I didn't know anything about it. My mind was blown, and I fell in love with the movies. He can't be reasoned with. That is a great thing. And by the way, Michael Biehn, who plays Kyle in that original one, Michael Biehn, who's a guy who should have been a major A-list star. Honestly, Michael Biehn is the guy to me because you look at the movies he's appeared in too, like Aliens and Terminator and stuff like that. Michael Biehn should have been a major A-list megastar. And for whatever reason, and I don't know what the story is, but for whatever reason, he was never able to crack that upper echelon. And I'm really not sure why. He didn't. I remember back when I was a kid, when I was younger, and we knew an X-Men movie was coming, all the fan castings wanted Patrick Stewart as Professor X. But all the fan castings for Cyclops, and for those of you who are old enough to remember, when they were coming out with that first X-Men movie, the fan castings for Cyclops was Michael Biehn as Cyclops. He would have been a great Cyclops. I like the guy they went with, but he would have been a great Cyclops. But anyway, a great scene, Scott. Great scene. All right, next up, Kyle Schroeder writes, I used to drink pop like a fish breathes water, but I thought I had to give it up. Thank you for bringing my attention to Zevia. Finally, a 0-calorie soda with no artificial sweeteners. I'm going to call Zevia and tell them to sponsor you. No joke. Ladies and gentlemen, Zevia, sponsor me, you sons of bitches. And that was the same thing for me, actually. I used to drink a 2-liter bottle, right? I know you Americans don't think in terms of liters, but a 2-liter bottle. A big bottle. I used to drink 2 2-liter bottles of Coke a day. 2 2-liter bottles of Coke a day. Then when I realized, wow, look at how many calories and sugar and all this kind of stuff are in it. So I thought I made the healthy choice to switch to diet. I'm a Coke guy over Pepsi, but I didn't really like Diet Coke. I don't hate Diet Coke, but it didn't quite work for me nearly as well. And I find even though I like Coke more than Pepsi, I found I really enjoyed Diet Pepsi much more than I like Diet Coke. So on the regular side, I like Coke over Pepsi, but on the diet side, I like Pepsi over Coke. And so I started drinking 2 2-liter bottles of Diet Pepsi a day. Well, then I started reading and realizing just how bad a lot of the diet soda is, particularly because of the artificial sweeteners. I thought, well, hell, I need to kick that habit. So I started searching for a soda that would not have artificial sweeteners and not have any calories. And that's when I got a bunch of people started recommending Zevia Cola to me. And it really grew on me. And now I quite enjoy it a lot. So I'm glad you're able to enjoy it as well. And no, they don't sponsor me. Those sons of bitches at Zevia don't sponsor me. Zevia, listen, I have sold more of your damn, kitten juice, whatever it is here. I have sold more of your damn fizzy juice. I mean, it's cola. Than anybody in your damn marketing department has, you sons of bitches. Sponsor me. Anyway, I do like to drink quite a bit. All right, next up. Ryan Lohner writes, after rewatching American Graffiti, great movie, by the way. Everybody thinks of George Lucas, and they obviously think Star Wars, of course. Or Indiana Jones, or even Howard the Duck, but people don't think about American Graffiti, which for a lot of people in Hollywood is what put him on their map. Anyway, after watching American Graffiti, it hit me that we were actually seeing Harrison Ford be a big jerk to the guy who would later direct Han Solo's origin story, all under George Lucas's watch. You had Harrison Ford, you had Ron Howard. I mean, it was a really good cast. We had Ron Howard in there, the guy who would eventually direct a Han Solo movie, and Harrison Ford, who would later go on to play Han Solo himself. Great story, though. One of my favorite George Lucas stories of all time comes from American Graffiti. And it kind of sums up George Lucas as a filmmaker. And this philosophy really comes true in the prequels. But, Ron Howard was a young guy at the time. When he was in American Graffiti, and he wanted to be a director. And George Lucas heard that he wanted to be a director. So one day on set, he's talking to Ron Howard, and he says, hey, listen, you want to be a filmmaker? Listen, go into animation. Go into animation. And Ron Howard's like, oh, well, that's cool. Like, why? Like, why would you suggest animation? Because if you go into animation, then you don't have to worry about working with actors. You don't have to worry about working with actors. And I thought, if anything kind of really encapsulates George Lucas as a filmmaker, it's that statement right there. So that's one of my favorite stories about George Lucas that comes out of there. All right, let's move on here. Where'd we go? That was Ryan Lohner, and good on you for watching American Graffiti. Suthius writes, hey guys, if you search for it, there's like a 15-minute long video of police body cam footage pulling over Borat in his yellow truck with his daughter sitting on the roof. LOL, Borat's in character the entire time. Some of it is funny from the officer's point of view. LOL. Okay, I have not seen that, but I've got to go look that up. I am absolutely going to go look that up, Suthius. Thank you for putting that on my radar. That I got to see, especially if it's something that didn't make it into the movie. I got to see that. All right. Nick Whitaker writes, hey, John, I have blue dyed hair. This, of course, goes back to yesterday's show. I have blue dyed hair. Make those accusations to my face, you son of a bitch. Obviously kidding. Have a great day, man. So yesterday, thanks for sending that in, Nick. Yesterday, I can't remember which topic we were talking about. I think it has something to do, I can't remember, but I said, hey, well, if you had a group of people who had blue dyed hair, like, would you say this, blah, blah, blah? So Nick is obviously following up on that. My apologies to the blue dyed hair community. I clearly was only using an example, but anyway, thanks for that, Nick. All right. I'm Batman writes, Have you seen Danny Elfman's new music video called Happy? I thought he just did music for movies, but apparently he had a solo career. Very creepy, and I was laughing at how creepy it is. Nope, I am not familiar with it. I'm not familiar. You know what's funny? I knew his daughter. Actually, Danny Elfman has a daughter named Molly Elfman. And she was actually in our sphere for a while. Like, she was a writer for some movie websites and stuff like that. I even had her 1 year on the Masters of the Web panel as a writer. She's super gifted, but she really at heart was a filmmaker. And so she left our world and went on and really got through herself in the filmmaking. I'm not sure where she is. And I mean, I haven't talked or seen her in many years, but I wonder where she's at right now. But yeah, but she got into filmmaking, which is really cool. So Danny Elfman, obviously talent runs in the family. All right, next up, Andy Hong writes, 1 of 3. John, did you see the latest episode of Supernatural? I have not, so I won't be able to answer whatever this question is. The writers took what they did with Chuck in season 14 finale and pushed it from a 7 to a 10. I really don't like this because it's a massive contradiction to who Chuck was before season 14. And what I loved about this show was how Dean and Sam always chose each other, pushing them through their hardship and tragedies. Now, if I try to rewatch the first 5 seasons, I'm going to always think this is all a sick joke from Chuck in the back of my mind. Regardless, I'm still enjoying this final season. I really liked how showrunners have played on the theme of questioning the concept of free will and what victories were truly earned by the Winchesters and really breaking the fourth wall. Again, Andy, I can't. Unfortunately, I can't comment because I haven't seen the latest episode. The newest episode I saw was, the second last one, not this most recent last one. So I don't know. But yeah, look, I have loved Supernatural, some seasons more than others, but overall, I have loved Supernatural all the way through. I've never had a Supernatural episode that I didn't like until the season finale of season 14. Where they completely contradicted everything they had done in the show up to that point, and all of a sudden Chuck is now the bad guy. To me, it felt desperate. It felt like a panic. They did it in panic because like, oh, next year's the last season. Well, we've got to have our biggest villain ever. Who's going to be our biggest antagonist ever? Chuck. Chuck will be the biggest antagonist ever. You can't get any bigger of an antagonist than Chuck. He's like, come on, but that's... I don't know. And it was the first episode of Supernatural that I ever disliked. And listen, I've enjoyed watching this season, but it still has that bad taste in my mouth. Like that one, what was it? Mrs. Butters? Was that the episode where they had the forest nymph in it? Oh my God, I loved that episode. That episode was a lot of fun. But I'm okay with this season. I will watch it through to its end, but the show kind of soured for me with the season finale of season 14. That's when the show soured for me, unfortunately. So we'll see. We'll see what I think about this latest episode, Andy, once I have a chance to watch it. All right, next up, the Wakandan Forever writes, Boo! My all-time favorite horror movie franchise is Child's Play. It was the first horror film I ever saw as a kid. I love the series from the original Bride, and I even like the remake. What is the first scary movie or franchise you watched as a kid? Well, I mean, I remember the first movie that terrified me as a kid was Jaws. I still remember as a kid asking my mom, like after I saw Jaws, and I don't know off the top of my head how on earth did I see Jaws when I was that young, but I think I watched it on home video or whatever, and I remember asking my mom to sit in my room as I went to sleep because that was the first one to me that really terrified me. That was the one to me that like completely threw me. It was that first one. And again, like today, would I consider it like super scary? No, but at the time, oh my gosh, Wakandan, at the time, it was Jaws. All right, Wakandan Forever also writes, Hannibal Confess. What is this divine-looking amuse-bouche? I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. If I tell you, I'm afraid you won't even try it. Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Red Dragon. That scene floored me. John, I do wish we could get we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye. Get it? I'm having an old friend for dinner. By the way, one of the creepiest and not the best Hannibal movie is when, hold on a second, let me look this up. is that one movie when it's him and Ray Liotta. And it is seriously, even though it's not a great movie, the scene where he is sitting there and Ray Liotta is sitting there having dinner and is acting kind of weird. And you realize that the back of his head has been removed and little bits of his brain have already been removed, but he was still alive. But Dr. Lecter had taken out little bits of his brain and was actually cooking it up, and he was making him eat his own brain. Dude, I mean, that scene is crazy. That scene freaks me out. Anyway, all right, next up. We got Jared's Reviews, who writes, with Netflix raising prices again and the amount of streaming networks starting up, theoretically, let's say you can only set aside $30 to $35 a month for streaming. What networks do you pick based on content they have now and what they have in development? Ooh. Yeah, listen, streaming is only going to get more expensive. Streaming is only going to get more expensive. Netflix prices will continue to go up. Look, we talked the other day that Netflix spends more money every year than they spend, or than they make. They spend more money every year than they make. That's part of doing business, right? You got to spend more money sometimes to get things established, to get to where you want to be, and then you just trust the revenue takes over. Somebody was trying to write into me, John, Netflix had $24 billion in revenue. Don't you know that that's more than their debt? Clearly, somebody didn't understand the difference between revenue and profit. Revenue is not profit. Revenue is the amount of money you took in before what you take in consideration of what your expenses were and what your expenditures were. But at any rate, so they're going to pass on that cost to you and I. And listen, we really shouldn't complain too much about it, because in reality, when you consider how much content is on Netflix and we pay $13 a month for that, when you consider how much content is on Netflix and how much Netflix is watched, $13 a month is a joke. That's stupid cheap. That is ridiculously cheap when you really consider how much you watch. I mean, depending on who you are, maybe you're somebody who doesn't watch Netflix, but for the most part, Netflix users, the amount of content we watch every month on Netflix is crazy. It's crazy. $13 a month? That's a ludicrous deal. You're going to see those prices go up. It's great that Disney Plus right now is $7. Great. That's going up. Oh, believe that's going up. Apple TV Plus right now is what, $5 or $6? Great. Oh, that's going up. Believe that's going to go up. When you add together right now all the streaming services you may want to have, it's already expensive once you add it up. Like I remember I told you guys a couple of months ago, I officially crossed the threshold that I am now paying more money per month for my streaming services than I used to pay for cable. And I remember back in the day when I was about to become a cord cutter, and you know, the executives and all that saying, hey, listen, you may seem all cheap and free right now, but there's going to come a time where you're going to be paying more money a la carte for all these streaming and digital options than you are for cable. And people like me went, ha, no, we're not. You're just a sore loser, cable company. You're just a sore loser. You're going to be paying a tenth of what I pay for cable on my delicious digital streaming services. They were right. And it's only going to get more expensive. Now, the trade-off for that, of course, is that we have incredible content. We have great convenience and access to these services, and it is far better. It is far better than the old cable days. Absolutely. But it is more expensive too, and it's going to get even more expensive. So if I theoretically only had $30 to $35 that I could spend right now on streaming services, what is it going to be? Well, I'm going to spend $15 of it on the Disney Hulu ESPN Plus package. there's a package that has Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN Plus. And the funny thing is, the main things I want out of that isn't even Disney Plus. The main things I want out of that are ESPN Plus and Hulu. I actually watch both of those more than I watch Disney Plus. But on top of that, we've got all the MCU shows coming. So there's that. So it would probably be that. It would probably be Netflix. And then here's the thing. Amazon Prime is different because I get Amazon Prime. My main reason for having Amazon Prime isn't for the video service. The main reason I have Amazon Prime is for the free 2-day delivery because I order a lot of stuff on Amazon and my wife does too. So I'm not really going to count that. I'm not going to count that, but I guess it would be the Disney Plus package and Netflix, and then I'm out of money. If you're setting the budget at $30 to $35, you pretty much hit the ceiling there. And those prices are going to continue to go up. So it's tough. It's tough. All right. Let's see. Where are we at? Sorry, we had a jump here. Where are we at right now? Okay, that was yours. Okay, next up. Alan Dale writes, John, I pirated season 1 of The Mandalorian. I couldn't have avoided spoilers for 4 months in the UK as I move in these fandom circles on the net. With no HBO Max here, I hope the Snyder Cut is on another platform. If not, I'm sorry, but I will do it again. Sorry. This is one of those gray, ambiguous areas. Like when you're talking about content that you simply don't have access to, you are willing to pay for it. You are anxious to pay for it. You are begging to pay for it. Take my money. And they're simply not giving you an avenue to have it when other people do. That's a gray area, man. I no judgment from me. That's a tricky situation. Now it's to go and steal it. Just because I can't afford it. That's not, but you literally have people for Mandalorian or Snyder Cut or whatever it is, says, I have money. I have saved my money for this. I want to give you this money so I can watch this content. I'm just saying I don't blame you. Anyway, let's keep things going here. Next up, Ryan Lohner writes, I spent much time on Tatooine and never seen a Mandalorian. I'm always amazed when sci-fi writers seem to have no idea. Quite often, but you know what? It's not just Star Wars that does it. It's not just Star Wars that does it. There's a lot of sci-fi content out there where it's like, oh, you're from so-and-so planet, and everybody then just assumes they know what planet that is. They just, or know that, oh, you're from that planet? Oh, you must know Eddie. I know as a Canadian, when I came down to LA for the first time, this is a stereotype, but it's absolutely true. When I came down to LA for the first time and I would meet people and it would come up that I'm Canadian, a bunch of them would ask, oh, I've got a friend named Charlie in Toronto. Do you know Charlie? It's like, you do realize Canada is like way bigger than the United States, right? Like, you know, it's a much larger country. It's a very geographically large piece of land. You know that. But anyway, yeah, sci-fi movies, including Star Wars, is like, oh, you're from wherever? You must know so-and-so. It's like, that is kind of implied, isn't it? All right, next up, Abdul writes, hey, John, love the Mando episode. Me too. In regards to Disney Plus having the Runaways for quite a while now, do you see them pushing more content that could be as non-family oriented, such as 24, Firefly, Angel, and Buffy, could all be added or rebooted? Well, I mean, listen, I think there is a reason that that Disney Plus exists while Disney also has Hulu. There was a reason that Hulu or that Disney really wanted to own Hulu. And I think you're going to see a division of content. But that doesn't mean the only things that can go on Disney Plus are kid movies, but rather family friendly. And listen, I know it's weird to think about this, but like The Dark Knight, I would argue The Dark Knight is a family friendly film. It is not a kid film. It's not a film targeted at children, but it's family friendly. Like, you could have your family in the room. You don't have to worry about it, right? Depending on how protective of your kids you are, I suppose, but and what content they see. But really, for the most part, I would even argue The Dark Knight is family friendly. So I think there's a lot of stuff that you could put on. Firefly, I definitely think you could put on there. I do. And there is some stuff going on Disney Plus that kind of bumps up against that. But then the harder stuff, when you're getting into stuff that really is more geared adult, and I don't just mean R-rated, but like also just really more geared towards adults. That's what I think Hulu's there for. So we'll see how they kind of approach that as they move forward. All right, guys. Listen, we've run out of time now, but we still have some questions left to go here. We got Tim Platt and Casey McNatt and Ryan Lohner and a few others. Do not worry, guys. We will get to your questions this weekend. This weekend, I'm going to do a companion video because there's like a good dozen or more questions still left to go. So I don't want to have too many questions left over for Monday. So this weekend sometime, I'm going to record a companion video and I'm going to get all of your questions answered and get them put up in a companion video this weekend. Keep your eyes. You sent in the questions. I'm going to answer them properly in a video. So make sure you join us for that. And also, guys, don't forget that today at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, that's still going to give a bunch of hours for you guys to go and watch Mandalorian if you want. Ann and I are going to do a full open spoiler discussion of Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1. We hope you will come and join us for that. By the way, don't send in questions to the tip link for that Mandalorian spoiler. This tip link is just for the John Campea Show, so don't send it in there. We will turn on super chats for that Mandalorian video, so keep your eyes open for that, and that's how we'll get things in there. Anyway, guys, that will do it for me for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here. Special thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett. Thank you to all you guys for making this show a part of your day, and a special thank you to all you guys who did send in those live questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about, but number two, because you supported this channel while you did it, and all of us here, thank you very much for that. Don't forget, guys, do the 4 important things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks so much for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.